What's up, everyone? All right, so in today's episode, I'm going to break down my trades from the morning. We're going to start by looking at GRYP. This is a stock this morning that made an incredible move, and it's actually very similar to a move that we saw on a different stock just last week. So let's get this kind of zoomed in here. So if you look at this chart, what you see is a stock that squeezed from 50 cents a share all the way up to a high of $4.91 in 3 minutes. That is an incredible move. Basically 900%, nearly 1,000% move in 3 minutes. However, while on the one hand, you could probably interpret this as being pretty bullish, because this candle spiked all the way to 5 and then came all the way back down, the formation of the candle has this large topping tail. And those large topping tails are bearish. They show that the sellers dominated by the end of this candlestick period. This is a 1 minute chart. So by the end of this candlestick period here, the candle had come all the way back down. In fact, all the way back down to $1.40. And although it did bounce back from $1.40 up to $2.50 and then eventually up to $3, realistically, it wasn't realistic to expect that this would get back to 5 after that topping tail. It just kind of ruins the chart. Now, I'm a little surprised that you even got this big of a move on a stock with a 44 million share float. But if we step back and look at the catalyst on this was tied into cryptocurrency. All right. So once again, we've got, and this is, Trump catalyst plus Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. It's just sort of the trifecta in there. And so that, in spite of the float being higher, did get a really big move. So when I sat down, let's see, what time was this? This was about 6:30. 6:30. So when I sat down at about 6:40, I saw this had just happened. It was the stock that was on the scanners, and I was like, wow, okay, that was definitely a pretty crazy move. But I knew I couldn't trade it because it had retraced so much of the move. So I just knew that one was out. So I was like, all right, let's look for the next one. And what ended up happening was I saw several stocks that popped up and did a full round trip. Pop and reject. Pop and reject. And so I was like, ooh, that doesn't look so good. That's not what I want to see on Monday morning. And then I see KDLY hit the scanners. And KDLY ended up going up 476% in 30 minutes. This was unbelievable. I mean, it was really a huge move. So we're going to zoom in on this one on the 10-second chart. So at about 6:50 a.m., we'll go back all the way to here. At 6:50 a.m., this stock pops up, and it goes from 440 to 490 to 5, and then you'll see it go all the way up to $6. And I pulled it up right here. I saw it hitting the scanners, and I said, what's the catalyst? Why is this moving up? And there was no catalyst. There was no news. And naturally, it drops all the way back down to 440. And I thought that was, all right, this is what we kind of keep seeing. The market gets hot, and what happens is traders are so eager for the next big win that they jump in anything that's starting to pop. But ultimately, if the stock has no news, if there's no real catalyst, it doesn't hold those gains. It pops up, and then it reverses. And that's exactly what happened here. And so I'm just thinking, all right, this is another one that's doing this pop in reverse. And so even though it came all the way back down here to 4 from a high of 6, it bounced back up to 540. And I thought, no, I can't take that because there's still no catalyst to support the move. And then all of a sudden, right here at 7 a.m., look at this burst of volume right at 7 a.m. It goes from $6. So it bounces back up to 6. And then right at 7 a.m., it drops and then rips from 520 to $8 a share. And I'm thinking, what in the world is going on? This is crazy. This doesn't even make sense. So it hits a high of 807. It dips down. And at this point, I'm thinking, well, look, I mean, clearly this thing is strong. I mean, there's really no question about that. And so I went ahead and bought this dip right here with 2,500 shares. That is a small position for me. I got in at $8.13 right here. However, I just thought, obviously it's moving. So, let's just see how high it wants to go. So I get in at $8.13. That's my first entry. It goes up to 10. Then it pulls back right here. And I add at $9.95. It drops back down to 8 and I stop out with a loss. And I'm like, okay, that was a little annoying. So the first entry was right here at 8. That was good. I got in. It squeezes up to 10. I took some profit off the table, and then I added back right here on what I thought was a micro pullback. It popped, it pulled back, was looking for that rip through 10, and then it rejects. I stopped out at about 950 right here, which was that first candle going red. And so at that point, I had given back, a chunk of my profit. But fear not, I added back. I added back, let's see, it was a few minutes later. So we're probably right around here as we come up to 950. So I got in, and it pops to 1050, then it drops back down to 950, and then it pops back to 11, and then it drops down to 1050, then it goes to 1250, then down to 11. And so this is what you're seeing happening with these topping tails. It's popping up and dropping down, popping up and dropping down, popping up and dipping down, back up and back down, back up and back down. Now at 1250, I'm like, I don't know, guys, this is crazy. These candles have such a big range. I just feel like I'm completely off my game on it. And it ends up going, as you could see, up to a high of 1350, dipping down, up to 14, dipping down, and then right through here, consolidation before ripping up to 1450, up to 15, and then it pushes a little higher. Now, let me show you one of my best trades on this, which some people would say was luck, and they might be right. So my best trade on this, I was trying to figure out where this might catch support. So I connected the low of this candle here with the low of this candle here. I drew this line just like that. And when I drew this line like that and looked back and saw that it touched right here, I thought, okay, this does feel valid. So right here, I bought 4,500 shares at $14 for a dip off ascending support. And look what happens. I get in and it goes right to 17. And on that trade, I made $10,000 in about 10 seconds. Now it hits a high of 17.14, then it dips down here to 15, pulls back a little bit more, and then it comes back up again and does this pop to 18 and then drops back down. And then it pulls away up to 21, 23, 24 right here, and then it kind of stalls out again. So this ended up being surprisingly difficult to trade. You wouldn't think that it would have been difficult to trade, but in fact, it was actually quite difficult to trade. And the reason was because the spreads were so big. Here you have a head and shoulders pattern and coming back down. So then at this area, we had clear resistance at about 21.22 right there. So we tapped it once, we tapped it a second time, and I came back for a trade right here, and I nearly got smoked. I bought 10,000 shares right here. I was looking for the squeeze through the high. It goes up like 12 cents and then stalls out, and there's a big seller. I got out. It drops down to 20, and then a few minutes later, it sort of pulls away. So all said and done, I only locked up $13,695.04 on KDLY. And I started looking for, at a certain point, this just got too expensive. And I felt a little annoyed that clearly somebody had the news before it came out at 7 a.m. The news was at 7 a.m., but the stock started spiking at 6:50. Somebody had the news early and they jumped in ahead of it. Now, look, I'm all for jumping in a stock that's squeezing up, but in this market, we've been seeing a lot of round trips where stocks pop up with no news and they reverse. So it was the right thing for me to be hesitant about jumping in it when it popped up with no news way back here at $4, $5, $6 a share. And then when it rallied back up here, still didn't make sense. And then all of a sudden here, it spikes up. And I didn't even really think that there would be news on it at 7 because, I don't know, just that seemed odd because it had already started moving. But then it was probably about, 7 and 10 or 15 seconds I saw that there was fresh news and it was related to Bitcoin. And I was like, okay. So then I felt basically like I was behind the ball, sort of chasing this move from the very beginning. Like I wasn't dialed in and I never really got myself in the driver's seat. And then obviously very quickly, we were above $10 a share, above 15 and 20, and the spreads were huge. I mean, it was whipping around 40, 50, 80 cent spreads. and I just felt like I couldn't manage risk. I had a couple close calls on it. I had profit on that first trade up to 10, then gave back profit. So it just from the very beginning was not easy to trade for me. I don't know. I didn't feel like I was really dialed in on it. And, now it's pulled back a little bit. So now the sore spot on the day is BAOS. And it's especially sore seeing that it squeezed from $2 a share to $8 in, 30 minutes. And so this stock this morning popped up on the scanners once right here. It drops down, and when it comes back up again, I got in at about 295 for the break of 3. I recognize this is a double top, but I thought because of the strength that we had just seen in KDLY, that this stock, which is at a more appropriate and desirable price range, would squeeze. I really was waiting. Once I realized that KDLY was too expensive and I couldn't manage risk on it, I just got into this mindset of I'm waiting for the next one. I'm waiting for something fresh. And I thought BAOS looked like the one, but I took a loss on it. I got in at 296 and stopped out at 220, was my final exit. So I lost a lot more on that than I was hoping to lose. It dipped down here and I was holding, but I finally stopped out when it broke about 260. So, these are volatile stocks and we're in a volatile market. So I gave it a little more room and then, had to stop out. So, the fact that it then squeezed here at 1 in the afternoon or 12:15 all the way to $3, halted a second time and pushed all the way up to 8 is remarkable and annoying. So then you had a couple other stocks that popped up this morning. UPXY goes from 10 to 14 up to 16, but big rejection, pops back up. UPXI is on the backside of this move from a couple weeks ago. Pretty much any way you look at it, it's on the backside of this move. So yes, it has a crypto catalyst, but it's on the backside. GDC, this is a Chinese stock. This one spiked up and basically did a round trip. So you could see here, it went from, look at this chart. So this one went from $3 to $9 and then comes all the way back down. So, announces $300 million funding for cryptocurrency reserve and Trump coin. So these are all jumping on this same catalyst, except here we go, full round trip, even in spite of the news, which means some people are realizing this news maybe isn't all that significant and maybe doesn't actually change the underlying value of the company that much. So we might be at the end of this little theme, which began with UPXI a couple weeks ago. And, I've done really well trading it overall. And look, today's a green day. I have no right to complain. But I'm going to complain just for a second because I feel a little annoyed on KDLY that I missed the beginning of, I just feel annoyed that obviously someone had the news before it actually came out because, that feels like that's just irritating. I mean, it is what it is. These things happen. And, that person, I don't know. I guess in a way, they'd probably be trading on insider information because they knew information before it was public. So, that'll catch up to them, I assume, at some point. So it is what it is. But it's annoying that happened. And, so I never got in the driver's seat on that stock in spite of it making a huge move. I just felt like I was behind the ball. And then BAOS, annoying chop. And, and I just wasn't able to really get myself into the zone. But big picture is, just this month, I'm sitting at $243,000 on the month right now, including today. This is 235, not including today, but you add the 8,000 there. So, it's like, I was trying to get the calendar view here, but in any case, we'll do this one. We're in pretty good shape here. May is definitely off to a good start. And although today is going to bring down my average daily gain for the month of May because it's a smaller green day for me, it's still above my $5,000 daily goal. And, the one loss I had, which was probably the biggest loss of the month, it's manageable. It's disappointing, but it's manageable. And so I'll live to trade another day. And, bright and early tomorrow morning when I sit down, obviously I'll keep watching the cryptocurrency catalyst. And if I can jump in early and we get some more, juice on that catalyst, that's fine. But I want to be a little careful about overstaying my welcome because I don't want to get in too high and then catch a really dramatic reversal. So there's no question about it. Trading is risky, and today was no exception. I got on the wrong side of, a couple trades this morning, but overall, green is good, and we'll live to trade another day. So those of you guys who haven't already checked out a 2-week trial here at Warrior Trading, I'll put the link at the top of the comments and in the description, so you could check that out. It's 2 weeks for $20. I'll remind you as always, trading is risky. My results aren't typical, so please manage your risk, take it slow, and I'll see you guys here bright and early tomorrow morning.